The House Committee on Regulatory Reform will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter.
Present.
Representatives Liberati.
Here.
Neely.
Here.
Scott.
Present.
Young.
Here.
Grant.
Here.
McFall.
Here.
Snyder.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Mueller.
Here.
Miller.
Yes.
Wenzel.
Here.
Aragona.
Here.
Beerline.
Here.
Nyer.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 members. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Representative Liberati moves to adopt the minutes from June 18th, 2024. Seeing no objections, the minutes are adopted. We will now take testimony on Senate Bills 906, 907, and 908, temporary locking devices in child care centers, sponsored by Senators Moss and McMorrow. Senator Moss is here to provide an overview of the bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, members of the committee. I have Rob Mass here with me from MyLeap as well, and I appreciate you putting 906, 907, and 908 on the agenda, dealing with an important issue. We all know too well about the prevalence of gun violence around our country and here in Michigan as well. Parents especially want to make sure that when they send their kids off to school or drop them off at daycare, they will come home safe. I'm a founding member of our legislature's Gun Violence Prevention Caucus, which we established in 2016 to find solutions to mitigate this epidemic in our country. And last term, we worked successfully to pass legislation to keep firearms out of the hands of minors and those who wish to cause harm and terror upon others. But the sad reality is that we can't prevent every tragedy. And we must expand our tools to keep Michiganders safe during active shooter situations. Back in 2020, I was in the Senate when we enacted Public Act 45, which amended the fire code and the building code to allow for school facilities to install temporary automatic locking devices for building safety in the instance of an event like an active shooting. And since the passage of that law, some daycare facilities reached out to the state to license these devices so that they too can take proactive measures to ensure safety of the building and all those who are in it. But the letter of the law does not permit them to do so. So these bills merely do what was intended by the legislature in 2020 and authorizes freestanding child care organizations to install these devices or maintain them if they choose to install them after the passage of the 2020 law. So as I said, I have Rob Mass here from MyLeap to provide further details and the situation that necessitated these bills and how they resolve the problem.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the committee. In the interest of time and your packed agenda, I thought I'd come up with Senator Moss. The department is fully supportive of these bills to provide the child care centers the option to use the tool. I'll highlight that this is not a requirement. It's just an opportunity for child care centers to have the same tools available that our school buildings currently have. So mistaken interpretation at the time of the former legislation's passage thought that this extended it to child care centers. These bills bring that in line with the original intent. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from committee members? Thank you. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, we have Danielle Serrani from Michigan County Social Services Association. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, we have Brian O'Connell from Lockout USA. We will now take testimony on and vote on House Bill 5786, barber licensure hours, sponsored by Representative Churches, who is here to give testimony of the bill.
Thank you, Chair T. Carter and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify on House Bill 5786. This bill would merely change the Michigan course requirements for those seeking a barber's license from 1,800 hours to 1,500 hours. So last year, a constituent reached out to our office. They own Hair Lab Detroit in Southgate, Michigan, and they spoke to us about concerns about how difficult it is to become a barber and how if you live out of state, coming into our state, the hour requirements are sometimes less and it's harder for them to become barbers. So how this issue is important to my community. And to put it in perspective, 1,800 hours to become a required barber is 6 times the amount that the state requires for EMTs. In addition to this, Michigan does not have this reciprocity with other states across the country, meaning that if someone moved here to Michigan and then from another state, it would not necessarily guarantee immediate licensure here. This lack of reciprocity prevents people who might be licensed in another state and want to come to Michigan and practice here instead. The vast majority of states have 1,500 hours or lower for their barber education license requirement. Some of these states include Minnesota, Arkansas, Colorado, Delaware, Georgia, and Indiana. There are a few more as well. The legislation would help lower the time it takes to finish the program. It would reduce costs and financial burdens for students seeking to become barbers, as well as give those looking to move across state lines the option to work in Michigan as a licensed barber without any significant barriers. This would allow Michigan to be more consistent and competitive with other states in the hopes of attracting talent and workers to our state. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Thank you for your testimony, Representative Churches. Any questions from committee members? Thank you. I'll now take a motion to report House Bill 5786 with recommendation. Representative Liberati makes the motion. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter,
Yes.
Representatives Liberati,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Brandt,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer. Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5786 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we'll be taking testimony and voting on House Bills 5906, 5907, and 5908, and 5909 for the Great Lakes Water Authority Police Power, sponsored by Representative, I'm not talking in third party, me. I will be giving brief overview followed by testimony with Bill Wolfson and Barnett Jones from Gliwa. The committee will go at ease.
The Committee on House Regulatory Reform will come back to order. Chair, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Liberati and members of the committee. House Bills 5906 through 5909 seek to provide police powers for the Great Lakes Water Authority. The Great Lakes Water Authority provides drinking water for approximately 40% of Michigan's population and provides wastewater conveyance and treatment to approximately 30% of Michigan's population as well. Gliwa, for short, footprint is quite large, extending from Monroe County on the south to Flint and Genesee County on the north, includes Lapeer, Macomb, Oakland, St. Clair, Washtenaw, and Wayne counties. Gliwa has full-time personnel working at the facilities in Lapeer, St. Clair, and Wayne counties, with operations staff 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They handle a significant amount of chemicals in their operations, including chlorine and sodium hydrochloride. Because of the dangers associated with these chemicals and many of the facilities that border with Canada, security is a key concern. Each Gliwa conducts between 3,000 and 7,000 security patrols to maintain the security of its facilities and responds to incidents that may arise. Although Gliwa is a public body, corporate, and not a municipality, it requires legislative action to give necessary police powers to protect and maintain its system. Similar powers are given to other Michigan public authorities such as airport authorities, university, and private entities such as hospitals and automotive manufacturers. Providing Gliwa with police powers will allow to maintain the best security and operations of its geographically diverse facilities and will provide additional resources to support security within its service area. I'll now hand it over to the experts at GLEWA, Mr. William Wolfson and Barnett Jones, who are here to provide further information and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the Honorable Committee. I'm William Wolfson, the Deputy Chief Executive Officer for the Great Lakes Water Authority, and with me today is Barnett Jones, our Chief of Security and Integrity. As Representative Carter has very capably said, we are a large utility. We are a large enough utility, without going into detail, that we are very important to the law enforcement needs of this state and of this country. As you might imagine, we have seen local as well as foreign attention to our operations. This bill is very important to us. We were developed out of the city of Detroit's bankruptcy. So for many years, for the first 100 years of this utility's existence, there was police protection because it was municipally owned. We're really trying to restore that level of protection for the system. As Representative Carter noted, we do handle several chemicals, and we sit on an international border. I really want to talk about what makes this personal for me and why this is important. We had an incident a little over a year ago where down the street from one of our facilities, there was an argument. Argument turned violent. It was about a block away. And our officers saw that. They immediately called 911, but they didn't have jurisdiction outside the fence line. Argument resulted in an assault and a shooting. It took 12 minutes for EMS to arrive, and by that time, conditions had changed. That's an example where we would be able to go in and protect our property. I believe Chief Jones can give you one or two other examples.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Barnett Jones, and I'm the chief. I'm a longtime law enforcement officer. I'm still on the job, not only at Great Lakes, but in a small community where I derive my police powers from. I've done a lot of things in law enforcement. I was a chief of Sterling Heights Police Department. I was a chief of Ann Arbor and the fire chief there also, and I oversaw emergency management. The reason why I am here is because it is so necessary for us to protect the water and the critical infrastructure for nearly 4 million people, and hopefully that number will be going up. My officers are trained, have been trained since the day I walked through the doors to the level of law enforcement in this state. I brought that along also. I've also brought and started a fire service also. We handle hazmat and confined space. On the police side, we have seen incidents. We had recently a individual in a pickup truck turn off of a side road and start shooting onto our property. He shot multiple times as my officers and other staff had to be protected by the building. And then we made the calls to 911, and we waited for service. In that time, the gentleman managed to escape, leaving the scene after firing multiple rounds across our property. If my officers were law enforcement certified, they could have responded, left the property, went out and detained and arrested this person, quite possibly getting handguns and him off the street. We've had a couple other incidents where also we needed police powers. It is imperative for you to consider giving us police powers so we can continue to do a professional job at the highest level to protect what I call liquid gold, which is water. Thank you.
I'll just briefly add, I've been knowing Chief Jones for decades now. I was 12 when I met him. So, but when we talk about infrastructure and protecting soft and hard targets, I think that the protection of our water system is critical to our survival. So when we had this conversation, that's one reason. The other reason is because it is hard to maintain and attract candidates when you don't have that license. So this will give them the opportunity to not only maintain, attract, but if they train someone, they won't be so quick to leave and go someplace else. So I urge your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony. We have any questions? Oh, you got off easy. The committee will go at ease.
The committee will now come back to order. I will now take a motion to report House Bill 5906. I will now take a motion from Representative Filler for Bill 5906 with recommendations. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott? Young? Grant? McFall? Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5906 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now take a motion from Representative McFall to report House Bill 5907 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5907 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now take a motion from Representative Aragona to report House Bill 5908 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5908 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now take a motion from, thank you, Representative Scott to report House Bill 5909 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5909 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we'll take testimony and vote on House Bills 5949, 5950, and 5951, peer-to-peer car sharing, sponsored by myself, along with Representatives B. Carter and Representative Beerland. The committee will go at ease.
The Committee on House Regulatory Reform will come back to order.
Thank you, Chair Liberati and members of the committee. This legislation would establish comprehensive regulatory framework for peer-to-peer car sharing in Michigan. Peer-to-peer car sharing is growing in worldwide popularity and in Michigan. Peer-to-peer car sharing utilizes internet-based platforms that connect Michigan car owners and drivers seeking affordable, convenient, accessible, and locally sourced mobility options, and creates important benefits by allowing car owners to generate income as they micro-enterprise through sharing vehicles. For customers, it allows the flexibility, access to different size and classes of vehicles to meet their specific needs. These bills implement important ground rules for requirements for car-sharing platforms, mandate consumer protections for vehicle owners and drivers, mandate insurance coverages for shared vehicles, and ensure public safety by specifying the legal responsibilities of car-sharing platforms. Modeled after the P2P2 Car Sharing Program Act approved by the National Council of Insurance Legislators and supported by the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies, the American Property and Casualty Association, this package seeks to modernize Michigan laws to align with 27 other states which have adopted this model. We have also worked very closely with DIFS over the past year on this package to mold language to incorporate Michigan's auto no-fault laws. Under this legislation, car-sharing platforms would ensure that there is insurance coverage for the shared vehicle driver throughout the vehicle sharing period. And car-sharing platforms must assume the liability of the shared vehicle owner during the vehicle sharing period. The consumer protection component of these bills will ensure that emergency and roadside assistance for all customers and require disclosures to consumers of insurance and indemnification provisions, fees, terms, and conditions of sharing agreements. Placing public safety at the forefront, this legislation prohibits the sharing use of vehicles subject to federal safety recalls and requires platforms to collect and retain dates and times and sharing of other crucial information for purposes of insurance claims, accidents investigations, and litigation. I'll now turn it over to Sean Vink here from Turo, and I think John Heath is on Zoom. They'll be providing brief comments and further information.
Well, thank you, Chair Carter and members of the committee for allowing me to speak. Additionally, thank you, Chair Brenda Carter and also Vice Chair Beerline for your leadership. I'm John A. Heath, Senior Manager for Government Relations and External Affairs. And Mr. Chairman and committee, thank you for allowing me. I'm wrestling with some upper respiratory issues, so I appreciate your leniency. I'm here to testify in support of HB 5949, 5950, and 5951. The 20th century gave Michiganders what I like to call the automobile economic opportunity era 1.0. The 21st century presents to us the automobile economic opportunity era 2.0, where Michiganders are again able to pursue the American dream and achieve their financial objectives through automobiles and peer-to-peer car sharing. I will defer to my colleague Sean Vink, and Mr. Chairman, I'm being obedient to your 2-minute rule, but Sean can deal with a little bit more detail in the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sean Vink. I'm Associate General Counsel and Senior Director at Turo. Very pleased to be here today. I won't use any more of your time just repeating what my colleague said, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about any of the 3 bills, and thank you for the opportunity.
I just have one question. The homeowner, the car owner has insurance. Does the person that's going to lease that car or rent it, does he have to have a policy also?
Yes. So we, under this legislation, if this were to be enacted, it requires that the platform, that's my company, Turo, or another peer-to-peer company, ensure that all drivers have insurance coverage throughout the duration of the car sharing period. So we have to make sure that there's no gap in coverage and that every driver is fully covered and does so in accordance with Michigan law, including the state's no-fault law, as was mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just add real quick. So, and I appreciate Representative Beerline because we've talked about this. When you travel now, and after the pandemic, many car rental agencies sold off their stock inventory. So when you go places now, you need an alternative because Uber and Lyft may not fit your needs. So in 27 other states, they have this. It's just another option for people that don't want to own a car full time, or for somebody who works at home and needs some extra income and they can rent their car out on a case-by-case basis. Thank you.
Representative Scott?
Thank you for your testimony. You probably just answered a little bit of what I was going to ask. So how does the peer-to-peer differ from the traditional rental car? And why do we need state regulation?
Thank you for the question. So it differs from rental car in a couple of ways. The primary difference is that we don't own any vehicles. So individual vehicle owners here in Michigan make their cars available for sharing. We operate a technology platform, so we intermediate between drivers and owners. So because we don't have a fleet, that really distinguishes us. And what the laws that are the bills that are in front of you today really try to do is to adapt Michigan law to that reality of a three-party transaction, to make sure that our responsibilities are delineated clearly, to make sure that both owner and driver are fully covered in accordance with the state laws for the duration of the car sharing period. So it's really that's the key difference. We introduce a technology platform, and then we introduce the concept of individual vehicle owners being able to make their cars available for sharing. That's the core difference.
So is there a
And I might also
roster?
add that those dollars that hosts earn cycle locally. So those profits are not shipped off to another location, but the profits that our hosts make stay within those communities. And also, it's a resource for rural Michiganders to suburban to urban Michiganders. And so I think those certainly lay out some key differences.
I see. And how do they find out about the availability? I mean, is there some sort of roster, or how do you find out about the peer-to-peer cars availability?
We have obviously a functional app and website. We have a marketing team that is laboring daily to make sure that we push out the message. And then what we've found is that individuals that use Turo just seem to be those evangelists, if you will. And so there's that organic individual to individual, but also through our marketing efforts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No further questions. Thanks for your testimony. Committee will go at ease.
The Committee on House Regulatory Reform will now come back to order. We do have an amendment. Oh, read the cards in. Yep. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, we have Dyke Von Koving from the Insurance Alliance of Michigan. We do have an amendment for House Bill 5949 offered by Representative Bierlin. Would you like to speak to your amendment? Thank you. Representative Scott moves the amendment. Will clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Chair, the amendment is adopted.
I will now take a motion from Representative Snyder to report House Bill 5949 with recommendations as substituted. Madam Clerk, will you call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
And Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5949 is reported with recommendation as substituted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now take a motion from Representative Bierlin to report House Bill 5950 with recommendation. Madam, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5950 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now take a motion to report House Bill 5951 with recommendation from Representative Neely. Madam Clerk, will you call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 5951 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now take testimony on House Bill 5910 to allow bottle engraving of spirits during a promotional event, sponsored by me. I will be given an overview of the bill, following by testimony from Tony Mitchell from the Michigan Spirits Association. The committee will go at ease.
The Committee on Regulatory Reform will come back to order. Chair, once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members of the committee, House Bill 5910 would amend the Michigan Control Code to allow licensed representatives to provide bottle engraving of a purchased bottle of spirits during a promotional event. Currently, many states allow distilled spirit manufacturers and sales representatives to engrave personal notes on a bottle during an event at a retailer. Consumers react very positively and usually buy higher cost items as a present when the bottle can be engraved with a special message. Sales of higher cost items benefit the state, increasing the amount the state makes off the liquor markup and tax revenue. Currently in Michigan, engraving of a bottle of spirits is not authorized under administrative order, rule, or statute. Therefore, an update to the Michigan Liquor Control Code is needed. I should also mention that the Michigan Liquor Control is in the process of reviewing the bill, and we expect to see some changes of the language. I will now turn it over to Mr. Tony Mitchell from the Michigan Spirits Association to provide further info and answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair Carter and committee. Appreciate the time to speak to this bill today. This is a win-win for everybody in the state of Michigan. There's consumers that are constantly asking if they can get bottles engraved, which, as the chairman just explained, is not legal currently. This will bring additional revenue to the state. The spirits industry already brings over $500 million a year to the state of Michigan, and this will just bring additional revenues. It'll employ more people. There'll be more marketing dollars spent in the state of Michigan. I've worked for a few companies that have done engravings in other states, and there's been large investments that go into this program. One of the previous companies I worked for employed full-time people to do engravings, bought little vans to take engraving machines around, bought multiple engraving machines to do these engravings, and these are not inexpensive machines. Some of them cost up to $10,000 each. So I personally take probably half a dozen calls a year from consumers looking to get bottles engraved. It's just a win-win to bring additional revenues to the state, make consumers happy, and provide a nice gift for somebody too. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Representative Fall.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question regarding why it's illegal. Do we know, like, what is the reasoning?
I believe the biggest concern is the aid and assist bill. It usually gets tied back to that, providing a service, because it has, a bottle would have to be purchased, but it gets tied back to doing it for a specific retailer or at a specific location, and that kind of makes it murky.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The committee will go at ease.
Wishing to speak. The committee is back to order. We have wishing to speak in support of the bill, Jared Rep. Traverse City Whiskey on Zoom.
Hi, we support the bill, and Tony said everything we wanted to say, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. Wishing to speak in opposition of the bill, Brett Visner from Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to come before your committee today. Our association is opposed to the bill as introduced, and I'll explain a little bit why that is. Just kind of dovetailing off of the previous testimony and the question the committee posed. First, would point out that it's legal to do bottle engraving in retail accounts across the state. The retailer is free to do that right now under current law if they so choose, if they want to provide that service to their customers. What is illegal is the spirits manufacturers from providing that service on behalf of the retailer in the retailer's account. And the reason why that is because it's conflicts with Michigan's aid and assistance law, which we view as a core component of the three-tier system. What that law does is it prevents suppliers, wholesalers from providing anything of value to a retail account. That's equipment, cash, services, anything of value, and that's designed to prevent suppliers and distributors from exerting undue influence on retailers and negatively impacting the market through anti-competitive behaviors. And that's why it's of concern to us, and we've had some suggestions that we've proposed to the chair, and appreciate the opportunity to come for the committee today and continue having those conversations. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from committee members? Yes, Representative Scott.
Threshold for engraving determined. Oh, thank you.
That I don't know. I'm not sure why they put that in the bill. I'm not sure where that came from.
Thank you for your candor.
Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We will now take testimony on House Bills 5960, 5961, 5962, providing for interior design licensure, sponsored by Representatives Glanville and Burns. Representative Glanville is here to provide a brief overview of the bills. Her staff. Make sure you guys introduce yourselves, and you can start whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Carter, members of the committee. I'm from Rep. Glanville's office. Thank you for hearing testimony on these three bills. My name's Steve Martin. I'm just going to do a quick overview here. The first bill will create a license for interior designers. The second will allow interior designers to submit applications for building permits. The third updates the occupational code to include interior designers. And I'll just pass it over to the experts to speak more of the bill.
Good morning, Chairman Carter and members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time today. With an opportunity to testify in support of House Bills 5960, 5961, and 5962. My name is Lori James. I am the VP of Advocacy for IIDA Michigan, and I am joined by Doreen Hunter, who's representing ASID, and Matt Collins, a student from Western Michigan University, currently enrolled in an interior design program. We also have Lauren Early on the call virtually, who is the Director of Advocacy for ASID. IIDA and ASID have partnered to form the Michigan Consortium for Interior Design. In addition to the written testimony we have submitted to the committee, which are in the blue packets at your desk, we are proud to share over 100 letters of support authored by constituents across the entire state of Michigan, representing a vast variety of professions. With those included are public universities, both educators as well as students, small business owners, large architectural and design firms, and individuals who have experience both as an architect and engineer. The broad and diverse support we have received demonstrates the importance of this legislation. The Consortium for Interior Design supports this legislation because it has a critical impact on the public protection of health, safety, and welfare. It is a profession that is very different than the interior decoration or what you might see on HGTV. NCIDQ certified interior designers are qualified by education, experience, and a rigorous 3-part examination. These exams test on the ability to design and coordinate multifaceted built interior environments that protect public safety as well as enhance the function and aesthetic quality of these spaces. Interior designers combine critical technical skills such as knowledge of building codes, emergency egress, fire and life safety, ADA accessibility, construction materials, and they use techniques such as space planning, construction documentation, and finish selection to serve the public and keep our buildings safe. We work every day to design interior spaces of public facilities such as nursing homes, hospitals, schools, office spaces, and government buildings, mitigating hazard to public health and safety in spaces where Michiganders spend the vast majority of their time. Interior design is such an integral part of the environment that the Interorganizational Council on Regulation, ICOR, which is an organization comprising the regulatory boards for architecture, engineering, interior design, landscape architecture, and surveying, they have issued a joint letter of support for reasonable regulation of the interior design profession, also stating that each of these professions have a direct impact on the health, safety, and welfare. Interior design is currently regulated in 29 states and 31 jurisdictions. That number is growing, with Pennsylvania achieving legal recognition just last week. To speak on the economic impacts of this legislation, I'm going to turn it over now to Doreen Hunter. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Carter and members of the committee. Thank you for your time today. Okay, I don't want to take my time away, but good morning to all, and thank you for taking the time to hear us. My name is Doreen Hunter. I live and practice interior design in Detroit for the last 25 years, both in commercial and residential design. In addition to supporting public protection and code-regulated spaces, this bill will allow qualified interior design practitioners the ability to practice independently and stamp and seal their own interior non-structural construction plans for permitting. Currently, an interior designer must pay to have their construction plans reviewed and stamped by an architect. The requirement to have another design professional review work that I am trained and tested to perform independently not only adds cost and time, but it also undermines my expertise and experience as an interior designer who choose to complete the optional registration. That is why 17 states in the U.S. has allowed NCIDQ certified interior designers to practice independently and stamp and seal their own work, non-structural construction plans for permitting. Consumers should be afforded the ability to work with a qualified, licensed interior designer for all work within the scope of interior design practice from concept through permitting to project completion. This creates greater choice, competition, increase quality in the marketplace for private and government clients. It also creates diversity, equality, and entry into the design marketplace for small business interior designers, for whom are primarily women and minorities such as myself. Again, this bill would not affect any other design professional's ability to practice their profession. I ask you to support this bill to allow qualified interior designers to fully realize their full potential and practice of a professional capabilities, which will be 50 years in 2025 interior design. I would like it to turn this over to to our student representative, Michael Collins.
Oh, good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. My name's Matt Collins. I'm a student at Western Michigan University, so go Broncos. I'm from Mendon, Michigan. I take time to explain to you where it is, but I need to tell you 5 other cities to then locate it. We don't even have a stoplight. And just Friday night, I was having a conversation at the restaurant with a gentleman, and he had asked me what I'm doing, if I'm from the area. He was from out of town. And I said, I'm a student, I'm studying interior design. And I got to sharing him, someday I'd like to be able to come back here to this town after I work in a firm, have some experience, and just talked about visions and dreams that I have to revitalize the small town that raised me. And right now I'm studying to be an interior designer, and I'm studying the concepts of occupancy calculations, emergency egress, fire safety, fire protection, building codes at the international and state levels. I am also aware of certain structural and non-structural building systems. If I take that column down, we're going to have some problems. I'm aware of these issues. Now, in my education and through my internship, I am aware about what architects and engineers and other professionals are doing, how that work impacts me, and vice versa. And when I begin to practice and a project goes out of my scope, when it is out of my scope, then I know when to bring in an architect or an engineer to do that work for me. And as I continue my education and step into the workforce, I do not want to be held back by this administrative red tape. And if any architect has read A Pattern Language by Christopher Alexander, you will know what the importance of red tape can do. And being able to submit plans for commercial non-structural projects gives me the opportunity to independently fully practice my abilities. Now I can do this in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Nebraska, but I'm not from there. I'm from Michigan. So I hope to see this bill passed here. And this bill, it'll open doors for those who become qualified and licensed the opportunity to provide these streamlined services in their own local communities. I hope that you'll vote in favor of this bill, and I'm going to send it back to Doreen.
Thank you. Thank you for listening again. We are happy to answer any questions as a panel, but I would like to leave this thought with you. Yes, we are in the 21st century. Yes, we need to grow the economy, and the way to do it is to sponsor Bill 5960, 5961, 5962. Are there any questions?
That's my line.
Okay.
Any questions from committee members? Representative Bierlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were a few mentions of other states that have the option to practice this way. My notes say there are only 2 states in the District of Columbia that actually require a license, and that you're allowed to practice without the licensure in those other states. So instead of adding a license, why wouldn't we just allow you to practice?
Anyone want to answer that? We could refer.
Lauren, are you online and maybe want to speak to that from a national perspective?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. And hi, Chairman and Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lauren Early. I can respond to this from the national perspective. Thank you for that question. So there are 2 jurisdictions, but there are a handful of other states that do have some level of licensure. Actually, what we have pursued here was in response to some feedback we received from Laura as the regulatory body. We had sort of been in an open conversation about whether a Title Act or another framework was appropriate here. And based on the feedback and the conversations that we had with Laura, as I mentioned, we are introducing and pursuing the license here. Again, this doesn't create a barrier to entry in any way for folks practicing in those non-code regulated spaces, which primarily is residential design, is kitchen and bath design. So this is really an alternative pathway for folks that are already working in this space, but have some bureaucracy in which they've got to coordinate with other design and construction professionals to obtain permits. So it may seem like this is a license and perhaps requiring of everyone, but this is really the sweet spot of allowing a distinct alternative for folks that are qualified with those 3 E's: education, experience, and examination, without creating barriers to entry for other folks. I hope that addresses your question. More specifically, there is Nevada, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. that have some level of legislation that looks like this, but there's 31 jurisdictions total that regulate the interior design profession, and actually 18 that allow for the permitting privileges that we pursue here.
Thank you. Seeing no
Thank
further
you.
questions, we have 2 on Zoom. We have Jeff Ferwita that wishes to speak and opposes the bill.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Ferwetta. I'm with Sedgwick and Ferwetta Architects, a firm in Flint, Michigan. I am the past president of the American Institute of Architects Michigan chapter. I am the current Government Affairs Committee chair, along with Jan Culberson, and we are opposed to this bill as written. We've had discussions early on. AI Michigan is against the current bill as written. Certified interior designers do not have the education, experience, and testing to provide the broad health, safety, and welfare services granted in House Bills 5960, 61, and 62. AA Michigan would be against any language beyond level 1 alteration as defined in the current 2015 Michigan Rehabilitation Code, which is the current state code. Alteration level 1 scope includes the removal and replacement or the covering of existing materials, elements, equipment, or fixtures using new materials, elements, equipment, or fixtures that serve the same purpose. If the bill were to be revised and stop at this level 1 that I just read and not include work or coordination related to any building systems, we would move our position from opposed to neutral. The bill calls for the preparation of documents for interior construction. Interior design work, as stated by this bill, does not include tasks related to building equipment such as HVAC, heating and cooling, plumbing or electrical systems, or structural elements like walls and beams. The interior designers don't have a qualification to discern structural from non-structural. Architects are held accountable for discerning between structural and non-structural elements, as well as engineers. If there's no accountability for judgments pertaining to these structural, non-structural, how does one know it's a structural element or not? So what we're saying here is, if you're going to take and revise the space and you're taking out a wall, how do you know if that wall is structural or not if you don't have the training that an architect or engineer has? So if somebody wants to do what we do, we expect them to be trained as we are, and the levels of training are not the same. So when you do move an element like a wall or something like that, that moves into alterations level 2 in the 2015 building code, which is a step above what we feel the education that interior design qualified people right now have. Reconfiguration of an interior space always has the potential to affect the engineered systems of a building, and the design professional needs the education, training, and experience of a licensed architect or engineer to understand and act on that interrelationship of systems. An example, relocating a wall can easily increase the ventilation requirements for that space, critical for indoor air quality and code requirements. How do you even identify that that's an issue without the proper education and interdisciplinary design team? That's everybody together. Adding interior design licensure is not required to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. This doesn't improve the health, safety, and welfare that's currently in place. Licensure would create more confusion over who's able to do what. To increase the opportunity for the abuse of these of submittals and put additional pressure on the state of Michigan and every individual township or city that has plan review to then determine if the submitting design professional has the appropriate credentials for the scope of work. Right now, it's taking somewhere between 45 and 60 days to get reviews from both the state of Michigan, LARA, and other local design communities when they do a plan review. And this would just add one more layer of is the person who's doing this work qualified to do this or not?
Thank you.
So we would also think that the ambiguity of the way the current law is written we'd be willing to continue the discussion with the design professionals to bring it into a level, even though 25 or 29 other states have the ability. They don't have the ability that is being written into the law that's been put in front of you. So we feel if this law was reduced in scope back to a level 1, then we would be able to be neutral on it, and it would be more in line with other state laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? No. Next, wishing to speak in opposition of the bill, we have Jeremy Berg on Zoom. Mr. Berg?
Yes, good morning, Chairman Carter and committee members. Thank you. My name is Jeremy Berg. I'm a resident of the city of Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm a licensed architect, and I also hold the National Council of Interior Design Qualification NCIDQ certificate. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Bodeway Professional Services. I'm also a member of the State of Michigan Board of Directors for the American Institute of Architects. I work with interior designers every day, and as stated previously, I hold the certificate that would trigger licensure under House Bills 5960, 5961, and 5962, which would propose outside architects under Michigan's occupational code to provide an opportunity. I oppose it so that we could provide an opportunity to continue discussions about how these bills will impact public health, safety, and welfare. Proponents are arguing that regulating interior designers enhances public welfare, but these bills lack the rigorous safety and competency protections that are standard for architects. Architects undergo extensive education and testing on life safety, structural integrity, and critical code compliance, areas essential for public protection in construction projects. Architects must complete over 150 higher education credit hours that include education in public safety, structural calculations, and building system coordination that my colleague mentioned earlier. A professional degree is required, which is a minimum of 5 years of higher education and passing a 21-hour licensing exam. In contrast, the interior design education is a much shorter program and can only total 2 years and pass exams with limited testing in building codes and document coordination. The bill as proposed also has a provision that could further reduce the education requirements for interior design licensure by proposing programs that are equivalent to programs accredited by the Council for Interior Design without defining a process to determine equivalency. As my colleague mentioned, the bills also introduce significant complexity for building plan reviewers who would now have to distinguish between elements under the purview of licensed architects and those permitted to be licensed interior designers. Under the current system, the plan reviewers can easily identify responsibilities based on the architect's license. By introducing licensed interior designers with authority over certain non-structural elements, the burden falls on the plan reviewer to parse out which aspects of a project's interior designer is qualified to handle and which requires an architect's input. This additional layer of distinction and inefficiency could lead to errors in assessing projects, potentially overlooking elements that impact public safety. In summary, these bills, in my opinion, fall short of ensuring the safety and competency required for independent practice in building design. While interior designers are providing valuable services, they should not be tasked with responsibilities that they are not fully trained or tested on. I ask you to reject these House bills in their current forms to provide us more opportunity to continue discussions with the interior design community and to determine an approach that prioritizes safety, competency, and responsible oversight. I appreciate the time and thank you for letting me testify today.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you. Not wishing to speak in opposition of the bill, we have Najehaya Chinchilla from the American Institute of Architects. We have also received several letters and correspondence in support and against, and they will be put on the record. Next, we will take up Senate Bill 868, alcohol branding labeling, sponsored by Senator Hertel, who is here to give us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. Thank you for delaying for a little while as I was stuck in committee over in the Senate. I appreciate you taking up testimony on Senate Bill 868. This bill passed the Senate with a 37-to-1 vote. And really what it does is clarifies the term brand and brand extension within the Liquor Control Code. We're doing that because in recent years, with all of the brands that have developed in the alcohol market, this helps define what is and what is not an extension of an existing brand. And you'll have individuals from the industry who will bring up some very concrete examples of how this is played out in the marketplace and the challenges that it's creating for some doing business here in the state. And so these changes ensure that all products from a single brand with that brand's logo or a trademark are considered an extension of that brand and that they have to follow the distribution contracts that they are currently in with that brand. I want to thank you for taking up testimony today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we've got quite a few cards of folks that want to speak for and against. If you all would be so gracious as to limit your remarks as much as possible. We have a deadline to get out of here, and I want to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to voice their concerns, either for or against. So with that, I'll start with wishing to speak in opposition of the bill, and a letter has been submitted. Tony Mitchell from Michigan Spirits Association.
Thank you, Chairman Carter and committee. I will make this brief. And the Michigan Spirit Association represents most of the major brands and many small distillers in the state of Michigan. We are adamantly opposed to this bill. We believe it's anti-competitive and it convolutes the current definitions. And as mentioned, we provided this letter that has many more details. So I will leave my comments at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Next, we have wishing to speak in opposition, Isaac Hartman from New Holland Brewing and Distilling. Mr. Hartman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Isaac. I've worked for the brewery now for 23 years. We're a small craft brewer and distillery in Holland, Michigan. We are opposed to Senate Bill 868, adamantly opposed, because we feel like this stifles innovation and essentially franchises ideas that don't even exist yet. So we have, these are examples of our brands up here. One is a vodka-based seltzer brand. One is a beer brand. We make other brands that are in different distributors throughout the state of Michigan, and this bill would really hurt. We would be locked into being forced to do business through one distributor, and we feel like that's restrictive. How these issues are solved is by a contractual basis where there's a way to do that currently. The last thing I'll say here is that this bill really doesn't address if we want to collaborate with another Michigan producer, who would have the brand rights for that product. So that's all I have to say. I know there's a lot to go in here, and there's a lot of other people that want to talk. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time and your testimony. Next, we have wishing to speak in opposition, Bob Jacobson from the, you'll tell me. Press the red button whenever you're ready.
Good morning. My name is Bob Jacobson. I own Leelanau Wine Cellars up in Leelanau County. You're going to hear a lot of, I'm going to try and be quick and get out of here. So you're going to hear a lot of opposition to this from the entire alcohol industry. I think this has been a very sloppily produced bill. So sloppy in the Senate report, I'm going to read you, and I'm going to just stick to some of the chaos here. It says as suppliers create and market these products, confusion has grown about what constitutes a brand extension. As a result, some distributors have put markings on a product that potentially result in unfair business advantages, and is one distributor encroaching on another distributor's sales territory. Distributors don't put anything on, don't do any labeling. If they do any labeling, they're violating multiple federal and state laws. This is so nuanced and so confused and so rushed. Even the analysts reading this don't understand the bill. So to say that this is just a cleaning up of a bill is less than a straightforward statement. The other position that's being put forth is that this is really just defining a brand as a brand and cleaning things up. The bill itself says a supplier's legal name is considered the brand name. Their legal name. That means anything that you produce as a legal entity is considered your brand. I produce wine under the name Leelanau Wine Cellars, under Farm Fresh Wine Company, and about 6 other brands that are sold throughout the entire country. This would give you no opportunity. The gentleman from New Holland talked about activities with other alcohol producers and the chaos. The alcohol industry is in a lot of transition right now, and you're going to see more and more co-partnering on projects between wineries, distilleries, and breweries. All it does is add chaos to that mess as to how you handle distribution. This bill creates a lot more questions than it does simplify any answers. And for anyone to suggest that this is a simplification or cleaning up, it's not a straightforward analysis of this. There's a clarity, there's a piece in there, one more thing. I suggest you talk to liquor control. They reference in here that brand names would be on the front or the back of the label. Front and back is a clinically defined term. It's part of your TTB application that the federal government approves. It then goes to the state. It is not up to this process to define front and back, I would think, unless you want to reference that process. Again, it was just one more thing left out of a hastily put together bill that really needs a lot of work if it's just trying to solve what could be done in a contract. So, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have wishing to speak in opposition, Mike Beck from Uncle John's Cider Mill and Michigan Wine Producers Association.
Thank you, committee, for allowing me to represent on this bill. I represent the Michigan Wine Producers Association, which represents all the wineries across the state, and my own business, Uncle John's Cider Mill. There's a great example on the board about innovation. I've just touched the surface with my own brand, and if I want to expand my offerings to the public, I would be really stifled by this bill. So far, my existing alcohol brand has gone through beer distributors almost specifically. If I wanted to create a wine brand with grapes that I can get or grow, I would want to choose a wine distributor. Some of my beer brands or beer distributors do not have proper storage for wine. So, and they have no experience in selling wine. So I would be forced to use someone that's really not optimal for any of my new brands to try and create new market opportunities for me. So this bill is a real big overreach. They are trying to take my legal entity name, not my brand name, from me. Any questions from any committee members? Yes, sir?
Question from Representative Argona.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You mentioned that the one on the board is an example of some type of unfair trade practice. Can you explain that a little further?
Well, I'm assuming New Holland, they have their original beer brand on the right.
Yeah.
So they're trying to do something new with a canned cocktail, and help me out here. But they would have the right to take that canned cocktail, because it's a new brand altogether, not associated with New Holland beer, to another distributor. With this legislation, they would not be allowed to take that other brand somewhere else. They would have to work with the same people who may or may not have the experience in moving that product.
Okay. So my understanding was the two from my right, because it says New Holland, they would have to go through the same distributor, but the one on the left, it does not say New Holland. It looks like a different type of branding, so it could go wherever. It could go to another one.
As current law states right now, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I was confused because I thought that's what we were fixing in these bills.
Help me out here. I mean, that's
what it's taking away.
That's what you're right.
Okay.
Taking away this opportunity to be able to do that.
Got it. So you're stipulating that all of these now have to go through one distributor?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We are 9 minutes out. We have Scott Graham in opposition, wishing to speak from the Michigan Brewers Guild. We got somebody on Zoom. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity. As mentioned, I'm Scott Graham with the Michigan Brewers Guild. It represents the state's breweries. This bill is alarming to us because it seems to ignore the interests of the hundreds of breweries in the state, and I would also argue the wineries and distilleries, as have been mentioned. For years, it's been well understood what a brand and a brand extension are. And in fact, if you want to distribute a beer, you have to register the brand of that beer with the Liquor Control Commission. When you register a brand, you register, an example would be oatmeal cream pie from Pigeon Hill Brewing Company, not Pigeon Hill Brewing Company. You would register Budweiser, not Anheuser-Busch InBev. You would register Oberon, not Bell's Brewery. Extensions of these brands would be Oberon Eclipse. It's an extension of the existing brand. Bud Light is an extension of Budweiser. Oatmeal cream pie, if you had oatmeal cream pie with raisins, that would be an extension of the brand. New brands have not been understood to be brand extensions just because they have the identifying characteristics of the brewery on them. You would think a brewery probably would want to use some of its intellectual property to identify and market its brands. And the reason that we're deliberating this right now is because there was a situation with a large supplier that was making a brand of ready-to-drink spirit-based cocktails. This is a little nuanced, and they wanted to come to market with another line of products that were made as a beer, and they had an agreement with a brewing company. They were a distilled spirits company, and they wanted to go to market with the distribution network of that brewing company. And the first wholesaler said, hold on a minute, I don't think that that's going to work. It was argued in court locally here in Michigan, and the court decided, no, that indeed is not a brand extension, it's a new brand, and you can go ahead and go with the distributor of your choice as a manufacturer. And now we're sitting here having this definition of brand and brand extension tightened to the detriment of hundreds of small breweries and wineries and distilleries that are literally struggling to survive in many cases. They're very creative. Who knows what products they'll be coming out with? They may be getting into distilling or cider or other products, and to lose control over how they go to market and have it dictated by a wholesaler rather than a contractual agreement between a manufacturer and a wholesaler doesn't seem to make sense. So basically what we have is a relatively few strong, powerful businesses controlling what hundreds of little businesses can do and how they can take their products to market. This should be dictated by contractual agreement between a manufacturer and a wholesaler, and there shouldn't be additional law in the Liquor Control Code to protect either the brewer or the wholesaler. This is not a simple clarification. It's a significant change that will have serious negative and lasting consequences for the state's breweries, distilleries, and wineries. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Thank you. Next, and we're up against the clock, and my guy Jared Rep from Traverse City is on Zoom in opposition, wishing to speak. Jared, are you there?
I am. Good morning. Thanks to the committee for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'll be brief. I think that a lot of my colleagues have shared most of the points that I was trying to make. I'll just summarize a couple of the top three. One is the way that the brand is defined in this label is really kind of shocking. Using a corporate name as a brand is I'm shocked by that. You look at a company like Anheuser-Busch, great company. They make Bud, they make Michelob. These are two completely different brands. They are completely different brands. One has nothing to do with the other, but they are both made by Anheuser-Busch. And if it said on the back, brewed by Anheuser-Busch, now suddenly these would be required to be in the same house. Well, you might be asking, what does this have to do with Traverse City Whiskey Co.? What I can tell you is that Traverse City Whiskey Co. has invested very heavily in what is, in our opinion, the best, most advanced specialty bottling operation you will find in this country for cocktails. And one of the ways that we promote that is by putting on there proudly bottled by Traverse City Whiskey Co., a service provider in Traverse City, Michigan. And we have collaborated with great people in this country. I will show you like one example, just because we don't have a lot of time. This is a product which, of course, my Zoom is not cooperating with me. Well, sorry, I gotta show you what this is because I think it's very important. This is a product that is owned by a brand out of California, or sorry, excuse me, Colorado. And you can see that this product, if I can figure out how to get my logo off this screen, which I can't seem to figure out how to do, it has the Craft House logo right there, Craft House Cocktails. If everybody can see this, this is their brand at the top there. And on the corner next to the wrist, it says Traverse City Whiskey Co., tiny. So this is an interesting example because with this product, we provided the whiskey, which was custom made for them, and we provided the service of bottling in this specialty package, which has a swing top closure. They couldn't find anybody who could do this. And we promote ourselves by just simply saying we bottled it. We don't own it, and we have nothing to do with it. We don't receive any share of the profits. We just take a small fee for every unit that we make. But this law would prevent this product from even being sold here and might have cost us the opportunity to bring this business to our team of 49 people in Traverse City, simply because it says it has to go through the same distributor now because it's franchise. It's part of our brand. It's not our brand. It's not our business. It's not our product. We have no interest in it. We don't own it at all. We have no control over it, period. And what's interesting about this, it goes through a different distributor in the state of Michigan than our products do. And they're responsible for selling it. We don't sell it. And it would create a market access issue. And I have pages and pages of products that we make that are in the same situation. Most don't have our logo on the front at all. It literally just says it's bottled by us. This would be very harmful to the Michigan distilleries like ours and the others that would use this as an ancillary source of revenue. They would look at it and say, Michigan is so overregulated, I don't even want to bring my product there because if somebody else bottles it for me and it shows up on there, it could create all kinds of problems with me and my distribution network. Another thing that I will say is to the point of collaborations. This is huge. If the committee's not aware, this is a very challenging year for distilled spirits. In particular, straight spirits are really being overrun by these new collaborations and innovations from other producers that are really phenomenal products, but came out of nowhere. We are trying
Jared, can you wrap me up in 1 minute?
No problem. We are trying to work together as an industry to innovate and partner, bringing the best core competencies from all of our companies to the table. And, to echo the point from my colleague at New Holland, this is, how are we supposed to do this and put more than one logo on a product? If the product itself is the Mitten blend, and 4 different distilleries or breweries are partnering on it, whose brand is it? Well, it's the Mitten blend. If we want to say, hey, we'll all put money into it, We'll all partner up on it. We'll create it. And it says a partnership of these 4 companies on the bottom, and we have a contract that says, hey, it's 25% each of us. Can't we contract with our distributor? Who owns the mitten blend? Who can get it to market? We have contracts. They have contracts. They have lawyers, many more powerful lawyers than we do. We're a small industry. There's a lot of us in Michigan, but we're small. They're huge. This is something that we can negotiate amongst ourselves. And while I appreciate the legislature's interest in doing this, and I think it's well intended, I do believe that this bill could be written in a better way, and that it's too restrictive. And for that reason, we oppose it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I have a couple cards I'm going to read in. Any member that has to leave, we're going to have one more person testify, and then we'll be out of here. Anybody that has committee? Everybody was here. We're just taking testimony. Next, we're going to have Brett Weisner, Michigan Beer Wine Wholesalers. After he's done, I am going to read in the cards, and then we'll adjourn. Will you come on up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. For a moment there, I wasn't sure if the previous testimony from the various parties were intending to talk about the bill before us today, because I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about. Process-wise, the bill was introduced this spring. Senator Hertel did an excellent job of reaching out to stakeholders. There was multiple hearings, a work group that he put together, and really encouraged people to collaborate and work together and come up with solutions. There were some folks that did. I'd like to highlight one in particular, a winery, St. Julian, that really put out some productive suggestions to make the bill better. The rest of the groups that you heard from today, simply what you heard more of was they don't like brand extensions, they don't like the franchise law, they don't like our 3-tier system. And that's all well and good, and that's a position they can take. But that's not what this bill is about. Brand extensions have been in place for decades, and this law is simply, or this legislation is simply clarifying that law to make sure that we don't have disputes. Because unfortunately, we've had disputes that have resulted from large multinational spirits companies trying to flout Michigan's law. So that's what it's about, making it clear what is and what is not a brand extension, so we don't have costly legal disputes for Michigan businesses. It's not expanding it, it's not changing it, it's clarifying it to make sure we don't have disputes. So real quickly, because I think a picture speaks 1,000 words, and this is different than what some of the folks that actually testified on this before, this is New Holland, right? On the right, clearly, New Holland is branded. It's used for marketing. That's what brands are. They're used for marketing. New Holland is branded on there. It's used for marketing. It's used to sell the product. On the left, you've got Lake Life. You don't see New Holland listed on there anywhere, right? It's not used for marketing. I will say, on the back of that Lake Life container, it does say produced and bottled by New Holland. This legislation makes it clear that that is not a brand extension. By having the legal name and it being bottled, and that simply alone on the can does not make it a brand extension. Right now, under current law, it's silent, and you could argue that it is. This legislation makes it clear that it is not, by putting on there on the back that it's bottled by New Holland. The legal name. Again, there was another comment about use of the legal name somehow makes it a brand extension. Incorrect. Again, it's all about marketing, whether it's a trademark, the name, anything that's used for marketing the brand is the brand. The legal name automatically doesn't make it the brand. It can, but it doesn't automatically make it the brand. Collaboration. Again, not sure what bill they're looking at, because there was language that was added by one of the entities that was working towards being constructive and making the bill better to clearly address collaboration. If there's a brand that has 2 existing brands on a container, whichever supplier that registers that brand with the state of Michigan is the entity that determines who's going to distribute it. So that's specifically addressed. Everybody was wrong about that. The cross-category extensions, this is one that I'm not sure why we continue to hear questions about it. Cross-category from beer to wine to mixed spirit drink. That ship sailed 3 years ago. This doesn't change that. That's been in brand extension law for quite some time. And again, on the bottling piece that someone brought up, That also, again, saying what is bottled by, actually in this bill makes it clear that it's not. Right now, it's ambiguous, and you could argue that it does. So we're making the law better with that respect. The last item that I want to talk about is this is one of the areas of where there was a dispute, right? So you got two containers. You got Jim Beam Classic Highball, and you got Jim Beam Kentucky Cooler Lemonade. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty darn sure that Jim Beam is the brand on both of those containers. It's a multi-billion-dollar international brand that has extreme amount of value, and that's why that label and that logo is on the container. Classic Highball is not a brand. Kentucky Coolers Lemonade is not a brand. Jim Beam is the brand. We're making it clear that whether it's a trademark, a logo, whatever it is, if it's used for marketing, it has the value, that it's used for a reason, that it is a brand extension. Jim Beam tried to argue that Jim Beam is not actually a brand, which I find quite comical actually, in the dispute. And that's the sort of craziness that we're seeing out in the marketplace with these large multinational companies that are trying to push around Michigan businesses. We're going to bring clarity to the law so that doesn't happen. With that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Seeing no questions, thank you. Oh, my apologies, Rep. Argo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, thanks, Brett. Can you go back to the last slide real quick? Because I'll ask you the same question. So on the right, with this bill, on the right you have a brand, a New Holland brand. So that has to go through the same distributor.
Correct.
Okay. And to clarify real quick, we're talking about which distributor each brand now has to use. So if I come up with a different, I'm a brand, I'm New Holland, say, and I come up with a different brand, I can now use a different distributor under the bill.
Correct.
Okay, so for Lake Life, now I'm New Holland, I make Lake Life, I can go to a different distributor.
Correct. And it makes it even more clear than it is under existing law that you can go with a new distributor.
Okay, and then I just want to delve a little bit deeper, and I'll try to make this quick, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that things can be mentioned on the bottle or can to say, well, this was bottled by, for instance, if it was bottled by New Holland, whether it's on the back or, is there any size to how big that has to be or what it can say? If you can answer that, and then I'll ask my last question just to be respectful of time here. On page 3, it says brand, and it goes into the meaning of brand. There's quite a bit there. There's some language being struck, quite a bit of new language being added. But it says even down to the letter. So how does that apply? So if it just says, New Holland or by NH, wouldn't that qualify? How detailed is that getting, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
So to answer your first question, if they're utilizing the supplier's name for bottling, on page 4, starting on line 3 through 7, it iterates the specific reasons that don't constitute a brand. So if they're just noting, bottled by, if it's whose it's manufactured by, if it's who it's bottled by, if who it's being imported on behalf, which is all the kind of the examples that were brought forth today, that makes it that it doesn't constitute a brand. For your second question, so to back up, are you talking about page 3, starting on line 11?
Yeah.
Yep. So those are the different things that can constitute what a brand is. And then if you go down to the bolded language on starting on line 23, it continues on to cover that. But I think the key component that's not in the law right now is if it's utilized for marketing. So if the name of your company you utilize for marketing, Jim Beam, in fact, I think Jim Beam is the name of the company. If it's used for marketing, now it could be that the name of your company is not, right? So you've got GM. Chevrolet is a brand, right? So it doesn't have to be the name of the company. It can be the name of the company. It might be just a logo and not actually have any words on it. The Jumpman logo for Jordan is an iconic brand that all it is a picture. So it can be a picture, it can be a word, it can be a letter, it could be the name of the company. It depends if it's being utilized for purposes of marketing the product.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. No other questions? Not wishing to speak in opposition of the bill, we have Joy D. Connor from the Michigan Craft Distillery Association. Not wishing to speak in opposition of the bill, Paige Foltz from Laura. Not wishing to speak in opposition, Andy Deloney from Distilled Spirits Council of U.S. Not wishing to speak in support, we have Lou Gretsch Cumbo from Great Lakes Wine and Spirits. And not wishing to speak in opposition of the bill, we have David Marvin from the Liquor Control Commission. There being no further business before House Regulatory Committee, we stand adjourned.